Right, I think it's time to get started. So let me just welcome everybody who's here to help out. Obviously, we've got Jane Robson, NALP's CEO, give me a little wave, Amanda Hamilton, who's our patron. And of course, today, it's a little bit different. Rather than it being one of us giving you advice and hopefully answering your questions, we have a NALP member with us. And this is Yasmin Underwood. Yasmin is currently studying for her level 7. And she's a consultant in the defence sector. And so I thought it would be really interesting to find out why Yasmin chose to study as a paralegal, how that's helped her in her career, and also to offer some advice on how to get into the defence sector if that's an area that you're interested in. I think one of the things that is often forgotten, and I know we talk about it a lot at NALP, is the fact that often people see paralegals as just kind of, you know, running around underneath the solicitors in a solicitor's office, and that's all they're good for, in a sense. And of course, we all know that's not the case. There's way more that's going on, and we thought it would be helpful to you guys as well to look at some of the different options, career options that there are as a paralegal, and the defence sector being one of those. And we'll have more of these sorts of webinars coming up over the year as well, where we'll talk a little bit more about the different sectors that you can be involved in and how to get jobs in those lovely sectors as well. So let me welcome Yasmin Underwood, who's going to be answering the questions today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, it's good to be here. Good to speak to everybody.
I'm quite sure quite a few of you might well have met Yasmin. And for those of you who turned up to our National Paralegal Day last year, I know Yasmin was there then as well. So I'm quite sure some of you already said hello in person. So let's get cracking. So Yasmin, of course, my first question has to be, why did you choose to train as a paralegal?
So I actually came across NALP during my bachelor's degree. I have to admit it wasn't something I'd heard of before, but the level 4 was offered by my university as a supplement to my degree. So I figured I may as well go for it. And I then went on to do a master's, also in law, with every intention of becoming a solicitor. But as the course went on, I went to various interviews, law society events, spoke with different companies. I started to feel like the whole process was just too long. I started university later than most. So by the time I'd finished my master's, I was already in my late 20s, and I'm quite an impatient person. So the idea of then needing to go through the SQE and getting training contracts, it really put me off. And I had friends at the time who were going through this same process, and it just seemed like they had no work-life balance at all. They were always stressed about their workload, how difficult it was to find graduate jobs, because the market is just so competitive for legal professionals. And I think I knew by that time that being a lawyer wasn't suited to me at all. But I still wanted to pursue something that was law and policy based. So it seemed like the paralegal route was ideal to give me all those practical skills without the extended time frame. And obviously you can do it alongside a full-time job. So it was just a no-brainer for me, really.
And having made that decision, how's it helped you in your career?
So although I'm not technically working under the title of paralegal, as a consultant, the knowledge and skills that I've developed through my level 7 have really been invaluable for my career progression and further studies. Simple things like research and analysis, attention to detail, how you apply the things that you've learned in your law degree to real life situations. They're all key in my day-to-day life. For me, though, the corporate and business structures module was a real eye-opener, particularly because I do all my consulting work through my own company, and I am not a numbers girl. So being able to understand things like corporate business structures and tax implications has been so helpful. I guess just to add to that, it gives me an edge when it comes to advising my clients. Most of the time, big companies will have an in-house legal team. So the projects that I work on are typically made up of military personnel. They're data scientists. They're quite mathematically minded, techie people. So having someone in the team that can offer insight into issues over legislation and policy at concept development stage is really useful.
And that sounds like actually it's had much more of an impact than even you might have imagined in the beginning, because it feels like sometimes, well, you go on a course, you learn the stuff on the course, and that's kind of it. But actually, it's been much broader than that, which is wonderful to hear, and I'm very pleased to hear
definitely.
that as well.
As I say, it's in everything I do. I'm actually studying for a PhD at the moment, and all those skills just, they're so valuable. I really can't stress enough how valuable it's been, even if you don't necessarily want to have the title of a paralegal. It's just fantastic.
And tell us then a little bit more about what you're actually doing in your job right now. Give us a sense of what your day-to-day is like.
Okay, so I feel like I should start by saying I actually had no intention of being a defence consultant. I just happened to get an interview for a job that I thought was going to be nice and easy while I finished my degree, and they had an office dog. So I thought, hey, this is great. And unbeknown to me at the time, this particular company happened to be an incredibly successful defence consultancy doing real groundbreaking work on AI and augmented intelligence. And so the more I learned, the more I was fascinated by the projects that we were involved in. And the nice, easy job that I thought I was getting turned into this really fast-paced career on a very steep learning curve. So my day-to-day, okay. Well, my primary role as a consultant at a very generic level is to solve problems for clients. Contracts usually start with some kind of base idea or concept. Let's say, for example, the military are looking to utilize drone warfare. So my role would be initially to do some background research on the topic, and then come up with some kind of proposal to identify a solution or a strategy moving forward. From there, I would organise workshops with other specialists to really flesh out the details. And I can then use my legal expertise to establish where we might come against issues with regulation and policy. Often I work with companies that actually develop technological solutions. So there tends to be a period where we're using different analysis tools to find variables, run simulations, specify data sets, which can then be taken forward for experimentation. And once all that is done, I put together a report documenting everything we've gone through and go back to the client with the findings. So in that sense, you can see how the process you'd go through on a client case is, as a legal professional, is quite similar, minus maybe the science and experimentation side of things. But that's really just an example of one type of project, and that's at its very simplest. It varies so much depending on the needs of the client, and it's never as straightforward as, you know, you put the proposal together, the client's happy, everybody's happy. There's always hiccups along the way. There's always some sort of, well, that's not what I wanted in the first place. And you say, well, that's what you wrote in your requirement, so that's what you're paying me for. Yeah, so it's a really diverse role. I hope that explains it a little bit. I can't really say too much more on the type of work that I do, but as a base.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you. And I think it's also really clear how, even though your job is not specifically a law job, having an understanding, a good, clear understanding of the law must save huge amounts of time as one thing, and mean that you kind of can leapfrog stuff. You go, well, I know we'll never get through this because there's a law against that, or actually the law says clearly here that we can go down this route. So I can really see how, as you say, even having chosen not to take a career in law specifically, how law comes into it so much for you on a daily basis.
Definitely.
So if that's so although it sounds, I think I get an idea of what the answer to my next question is going to be, but I'm going to ask it anyway, is what is it that you love about the work that you do? What makes you kind of go, oh yeah?
So actually one of the biggest things is that variety. I have ADHD, so I'm usually all over the place. I like to have lots of things happening at once. And as I said, every client, every project, every task is completely different. I'm constantly having to learn and adapt as I go. And for me, those situations are the ones that I thrive in. I'm always looking for new courses and opportunities to expand my knowledge. Although I've had excellent mentors throughout my career, you really have to accept that for the most part, you're on your own. The type of defence work that I do is 90% concept development, where no one really knows what to do or what to expect. It's not structured. There's no set way to do anything. So being confident in your abilities and what you can bring to the table is just vital, because there isn't anyone you can ask for help. You're all in the same boat. Everyone's just sort of, I don't know, what do you think we should do? And that's honestly something that's taken me a really long time to grasp. When you come from an academic or legal background, you've got that structure. It's hard facts, it's guidelines, there's a set way to do things, and you don't, I don't have that in the defence work that I do. And then maybe going back to my point about finding courses, it's really lucky that I happen to really enjoy learning new things, because as I mentioned before, I had no intention of being a defence consultant. So most of my expertise has really been built on the job and through hours upon hours of reading and educating myself on AI and ethics in my free time. Also, there's lots of opportunities to attend conferences and talks and events related to defence and technology work. So that's another aspect of the role I enjoy. I guess the other thing, and this is really very specific to me and the type of person I am, is that defence is still very old school. It's male dominated. And I'm not going to lie, the reaction that I get when I walk into a room full of alpha males with my bright pink hair and expensive shoes and then get on stage to present never gets old. But as I say, that's very specific to me. I really enjoy being perceived as the underdog and then coming out and giving these detailed talks on AI and development and things like that, and seeing everybody's surprise that I'm not someone's secretary usually. So yeah, those are the things that I thrive on in this sort of role.
I get that completely. Particularly the last one. I think most women will resonate with what you've just said there.
Yeah.
So if people listening today have kind of gone, oh wow, that just sounds like the kind of career I would love to work in. You know, the things you've said have really kind of motivated and inspired me. What advice could you offer others? Because I know that you kind of, as you say, almost sort of, you didn't have a plan in the beginning, but let's just say I've now decided this is what my plan is. What advice could you offer?
I think I'd say don't try and shoehorn yourself into something. If you've got an interest in defence or government work, the best advice I can give is to have a look at things like internships and graduate schemes, because they give you an opportunity to test out different areas and aspects of the business. I've honestly lost count of the times where I've thought I'd really love something or I'd be really good at something, and then the reality is so far from what you'd anticipated. You just can't wait to get it finished and move on. For example, in legal, the legal aspects, I really thought that I'd be really good at criminal law, and I'm really not, but I'm very good at wills and probate, and I never saw that coming. So I guess that's useful, but not relevant to me now. Equally, I would say it's always worth trying something new. You might be surprised that, as I say, you're good at something that you'd have never considered. But I wouldn't be too worried about not having specific knowledge or skills. Obviously, you know, don't go too wild. You wouldn't apply to be a Supreme Court judge as a first-year law student. But most of the time, I've found that companies value passion and a willingness to learn and pursue the legwork actually as far more important than specific skills, because you can always develop those. And then I guess that's more an inexperienced route in. I think if you're a fully fledged paralegal already, I would focus on highlighting those key skills rather than your specific knowledge of the law and legislation, because as I say, most of these companies have legal teams, so if you want to fit into an area that's outside of that, it's best to highlight what you can do rather than what you know. I guess the final thing would be, if you want to work in defence, make sure you've really thought about it. Defence work, especially the type of work that I do, which involves AI and autonomous weapon systems and things like that, it's not easy, and it's often not a light-hearted position to be in. Sometimes you're going to be presented with things that really make you question your values, much like being a lawyer. So I guess that's the best advice I can give. I don't know how helpful that is.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. And I think, as you say, I would agree, you know, as an employer as well, that passion and knowing that somebody really wants to do the job is much more important than how much experience they've got. And I think that, as you know, as you pointed out, although the job you may be applying for may not specifically be a paralegal job, having that law background, understanding some of the places that blocks you're going to come up against when you're working in a sector like that, clearly is, you know, is for any employer, that's going to be like, well, that's going to save us a lot of time and money because we're going to be able to jump through things much quicker. So I think, yeah, as you say, it's about the skills that you have and highlighting where that paralegal qualification is going to help that employer, as well as showing your passion. I think, yeah, that sounds like the perfect advice. Thank you.
Definitely.
So hopefully that's inspired some of you to go, you know what, there's a different route here for me as a paralegal, and maybe this is, and even if defence and the military isn't an area that you particularly want to go into, maybe it's made you think that actually there are other sectors. And we know, as members of NALP, we've got people working in the fashion industry, in Premiership football clubs, in the music industry. You know, it doesn't have to be that you work in a solicitor's office. It can be a whole range of different areas where those kind of legal skills and legal knowledge are required. And this is just one of them, which I said I hope has inspired you. So Yasmin has been given showing lots of her expertise and advice. So if you've got any questions, we have another sort of 8 minutes or so of the webinar for you to ask any questions while you've got Yasmin here. So don't waste the opportunity. Pop your questions into the chat, and we will come back and answer those as best we can before the end. So while we're waiting for any more questions, Yasmin, from your point of view, tell me a little bit about your experience going through the NALP qualifications, because you said you're currently doing your level 7, and I think you mentioned earlier as well that you liked the process because you could do it alongside a full-time job.
Yeah, so that was the main thing that stood out to me. Obviously, becoming a solicitor is a very long process, and realistically, we basically do the same things, right? Minus a couple of extra bits. So it's been, as I say, a steep learning curve for me, because I've done this alongside my job, which is very different. So even though you might not be fully aligned, I think there are aspects of every module that have been, like, as I say, the corporate business structures for me, and, you know, civil litigation, they're all things that are really actually quite important. Maybe you don't necessarily need divorce law in your life right now, but maybe one day. They're just useful things to have. So even though the content might not quite be what you want, it gives you a basis to work on, and then maybe you find an area that you think to yourself, actually, I'd quite like to learn a bit more about this, so you can specialize.
I suppose it also gives you a hint, as you kind of alluded to, of where you actually would enjoy working. So as you say, you kind of thought you'd enjoy criminal law, but you kind of realized, no, I wouldn't.
Yes, exactly.
And what, from your point of view, oh, I think we have a question, which is fantastic. I'm going to pass over to you, Amanda, so you can read out that question, because I think that would be lovely to get one answered.
Yes, sure. The question is from Michelle. She says, for AI, where would you recommend starting to advance my paralegal career? This would give me the edge if and when I were to start looking for a new role. I love my existing paralegal role, smiley face. So basically, is there anywhere you can recommend to start to advance an AI career?
That's a really good question. So because AI is still quite new, there's not specific law. So I don't know if you'd have read, Michelle, the article that I wrote for NALP, but at the moment there isn't specific legislation for specific areas or a broader area of AI itself. I would say your best bet is to look at maybe some of the AI courses that are available. So there's a platform called edX, which has fantastic free courses and paid courses that you can go on, you can get certificates. They're really good places to start to broaden your horizons. You've got, you know, basic technology law, GDPR, that kind of stuff. But if you want to focus on AI, I would say really look for those specialist courses, because that's where you'll start to build your own little area of expertise.
Thank you. I would just add, as having a number of clients who work in the AI sector as well as part of my PR work, is that there actually is a huge amount of interest at the moment in the sector, right across, for example, mobile and technology and things, in what the regulations should and will talk about in the future. So I think there's definitely an opportunity there. If you can get a wider understanding of AI and its implications, then I think there's a place in kind of basically helping companies formulate and then navigate those legislations as they come.
Yeah, I would agree with that, definitely.
There's another question that's come in, if we've got time for that, from Stuart. And he says, I spent 30 plus years in the military. I recently joined NALP to broaden my prospects and options. Despite my advanced age, I'm still studying, but is my military service likely to help or perhaps hinder me if I choose to return to work in defence?
Actually, no, to be honest. I don't know how much you know about the companies that work as the primes and that lead into the military, but military advisors are like gold dust. So any experience you can bring in your area. DSTL, the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory, is a really good place to look for this kind of work. As I say, I work with military personnel all the time, ex-military personnel, current military personnel, and people like you are gold dust. So I would say it will definitely enhance your opportunities.
Brilliant, thank you. I think there's one last question, although this really is a question not related to Yasmin. So I think maybe, well, I don't know, Amanda, did you want to answer that very quickly? Sorry, you're on mute, Amanda.
Good point. Sorry about that. I would suggest with that question, since it's nothing to do with Yasmin and the theme that we're talking about, that you drop an email to admin@nationalparalegals.co.uk to get that answered, if that's okay, because we're swiftly running out of time.
Yeah. Lovely, thank you. Well, I think that is, as Amanda said, pretty much all we've got time for. Thank you so much, Yasmin, for sharing your experience and your knowledge with us. We really appreciate it. And it's lovely to hear about a completely different sector, because I kind of enjoy that too. It's kind of like, oh, that sounds interesting. So thank you so much for giving up your time this afternoon. It is to share that information with you, with us, I should say. Thank you also to all of you for joining us today, and we hope you found this webinar useful. As always, if you've got topics or perhaps industries that you'd like us to cover in a webinar, then do let us know. Just drop us an email. You can use the admin@ or the marketing at email address, and that will get through to us, and then we will put that on the list of webinars that we will try and sort out for you in the future. And since AI has come up as a topic both with Yasmin and I think it was Michelle when you asked your question, do put in your diary the 11th of April, that's a Thursday, 1 p.m, so usual time, and that is a webinar specifically on AI, and that's with Robin Gerberan, and we'll be talking about AI and the impact in to the paralegal industry, and also I will ask him how to get a job in that sector as well and what kind of opportunities are available. So let me just say thank you again, Yasmin Underwood, for joining us today and sharing your knowledge with us. We really do appreciate it. Thank you all to you as well for joining us here on a rather chilly, at least where I am anyway, Friday afternoon. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you again on the 11th of April.